with our restaurants, 我就连婉如. Today we're going to talk about shortcomings of GDP. So, what exactly is GDP? If you think about it, it's goods and services for sale in a market. So, when you're talking about GDP, you're really talking about stuff for sale in the market. So, what does it measure and what does it not measure? I'm going to use a quote of Robert Kennedy. He said, GDP measures everything except that which is worthwhile. So you can think about this. There are many things that GDP does not measure, and we're going to talk about them one by one. The first one is leisure. We know that leisure, having something you have passion for, that you like to do, is very good for your mental health. But because leisure is not goods and services for sale in the market, so you don't measure leisure. So think about this, in general, Europeans, they work less than us, they have more leisure time. So in general, they're happier than Americans. But you don't see this on GDP, and in fact, you see that America has a higher GDP than the Europeans. And also I want to mention that the French law, starting year 2017, their companies are forbidden from contacting their employees using work emails in the weekend. So you can see that in the weekend, the French people can actually rest and not think about their work. But not us American workers. In the weekend, a lot of us are still on our email and still working for our companies. So you can see that GDP does not measure leisure, and leisure is important. The second one is non-market activities. So think about this. If you're a mom, full-time mom, taking care of your children at home, and this service for your children, raising them, educating them, tutoring them, taking care of them, but this is not service for sale in the market, so we don't measure that. And that's just too bad, because we know raising children is very important, because we're raising, future taxpayers, but it's not included in GDP. However, if you're sending your children to daycare, and the daycare charges you for a service, then you see that on GDP. So you can see it's very weird. As long as the activity is non-market, you don't see that in GDP. And the third, improved product quality. So think about cars. Today's cars are very different from cars say 50 or 60 years ago. Cars 60 or 50 years ago, they didn't have seatbelt, they didn't have airbags, they didn't have rear view cameras, and also the glasses are very easily shattered. So if you have just a small accident, you could be killed. So in GDP, you only see numbers. Today's GDP is a number, and 60 years ago, the GDP from cars is also a number. And you can't see the improved product quality. And this applies for just almost all kinds of products. And next, very important, you don't see income inequality from GDP. Think about this. We, United States, we have the best medical doctors in the world. We also have the best medicine. But when you're sick, do you just say, oh, I'm sick, I just go to see a doctor? No, you will think twice, because you're very afraid of the medical bill that you cannot afford to pay. And, this kind of income inequality is less severe in, say, European countries. The people there, they are not afraid of going to see a doctor when they're sick. But we in America, we actually have a higher GDP than European countries. So you can see, you don't see income inequality in GDP. And that's a very important drawback of GDP. Next, we're going to talk about pollution. So a lot of times when we're seeing Asian countries, especially China, we say, hey, they have a very high growth rate of GDP. But at what cost? At their pollution cost. A lot of times they, especially in Beijing, when they go out, they have to wear a mask because it is, the air is really polluted and it is not safe for you to just go out without a mask. If you don't believe me, just Google air pollution China and click on image. You will see how bad their air pollution is. So even though they have a very high GDP growth rate, at the cost of pollution, and you don't see pollution being deducted from their GDP number. And that is also a bad shortcoming of GDP. And last but not least, underground economy is excluded from GDP. So all kinds of activities are economic activities, but they're illegal, say prostitution or drug, and these are very common in, say, Mexico, but you don't see that in their GDP. So these are a few shortcomings of GDP. So now that we know that GDP has a lot of shortcomings, does it mean that we can throw GDP away? We don't look at that anymore? Well, not really. It just tells you that you will look at GDP, but not only at GDP. Think about this. Remember in the beginning we used an analogy that you go to see a doctor and the doctor will check your temperature, the doctor will check your pulse rate and your blood pressure and so on and so forth. So these are all important indices that the doctor should look at. The doctor should not look at your temperature and say, hey, your temperature is 97 degrees. That's fine. You can go home. No, the doctor will have to look at all indices. Just like us, we can't look at the US and say, hey, we have a high GDP, so we're good. No, that's not true. Because we have worked a lot and we sacrifice our leisure time and we have generally higher inequality than European countries. So these are issues that we need to address. We can't just say that, hey, GDP is high, so we're great, let's go home. It's not like that. So now that we know there are many shortcomings in GDP, we still look at that, but we should not overemphasize it. So I hope this helps. I'll see you next time.